Thank you everyone for joining us for this exciting August 2024 session of BrainX Community Live. I'm really excited about this session because this one will make you feel that AI in healthcare is for real. So, we showcase a lot of research work. We talk about a lot of different things related to potential of AI in healthcare, but this one makes it real. So I'm really excited about this one. So before we jump onto the session, for a lot of you who are joining us for the first time, let me tell you about BrainX community. So this community we started around 6 years ago with the idea that we need to have a platform for machine learning in healthcare for good. That's our very first session photo that used to be in person, but now we have been virtual for past many, many years, even pre-COVID. 6,000 plus international member community, a very diverse community of machine learning experts, researchers, clinicians, any different people who are interested in application of AI in healthcare from across the world. A very active LinkedIn group with 3,000 plus members. So if you want to catch on to the latest information, publication, upcoming meetings, that's where you want to be. And of course, our website, which serves as a repository for all the different resources. And I'll share some of the highlights of that. And we do these monthly live sessions to get everybody up to speed, to share the excellent work that is being done by many people across the world related to AI and healthcare implementation. So that's a snapshot of our webpage. You can go over there. You can see all the different resources. That's our Connect segment. These are the monthly live sessions that we do. But more than that, if you miss it, you can go and watch these sessions on our YouTube channel. So subscribe our YouTube channel so that you don't miss any of these sessions. Recordings can be watched at your leisure. As I mentioned, we have a very active LinkedIn group. So share the research work that you are doing or you are interested in over there that you found exciting on this, or an opportunity to collaborate and probably meet in person in future. We provide a whole host of curated research work through the links to these publications in the Learn section of our website. We can't provide you with the articles themselves, but we provide you with the links. They're categorized for different healthcare specialties, including now large language model, and you can filter for the specialty that you're looking for. Everybody's looking for data. And what's exciting is now there is data related to LLM in our data section too. So you can go to our data section, you can filter it for different healthcare specialties or large language models or generative AI, and you will find the links to these open source data sets that we have curated for you. And this is the largest repository of links to open source data set that you'll find anywhere. So we are helping you fulfill your data needs. And of course, you want to listen to the experts from across the world about their journeys, about what inspired them to get into AI and healthcare and what they're doing, what's their vision for the future. So that's another exciting series. You can subscribe and listen to it or watch it on your favorite podcast channel. And of course, we want to connect with you. Everybody wants to connect in person, and these are the different opportunities listed under the conferences section over there too. So you can join us over there. We also share a lot of frameworks and tools because validation is important, and that's one of our tools that we built mainly, which helps with human evaluation of the large language model output that you are working on. And another exciting feature is the book that the co-founder of BrainX and BrainX Community, Frank Pepe, and I published. It's available on Amazon, and it's about strategies for applying AI in healthcare. So hopefully this will help solve a lot of your queries in how you can get this implemented. But more important than that is today's session. And I welcome Dr. Ed Lee. He's the Chief Medical Officer at Nabla. He's a board-certified internal medicine physician, very amazing background from UC Berkeley to Tufts to being at UC Davis and then Kaiser Permanente, and the amazing work that he's going to share with us. One of the first publications about Ambient AI Scribe getting implemented, getting trialed, and a lot of learnings from that. So when I read this paper, it really excited me because here is a real evaluation being done in real world. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Ed Lee, and let him talk to us about this amazing opportunity and how we can all help get AI Scribe implemented in healthcare, in our healthcare system, and stop the burnout that we're all facing. Trust me, we have become the most expensive data entry clerks, and that's not what we all want to do. So we're looking forward to this solution. So Dr. Lee, welcome.
Great. Hey, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here this morning. Well, maybe a little bit of additional introduction to myself as we get started here. So I am the Chief Medical Officer at Nabla, a leading ambient AI company dedicated to streamlining the work of clinicians, really wanting to relieve the most significant burdens that are faced in daily practice. That is clinical documentation, allowing our clinicians to, focus on the attention where it's most important, which is, of course, our patients, and then bringing back their ability to enjoy care again. So prior to joining Nabla, I was with the Permanente Medical Group and Kaiser Permanente for 20 years, where I served a variety of leadership roles, initially at the department level, then at the hospital level, and then finally at the regional and national levels. And the last 5 years of my tenure there, I had the privilege of being the executive vice president for IT and the chief information officer for the Permanente Medical Groups, where I oversaw the evaluation and implementation of all technology efforts, particularly in the Northern California region. And so this is where I learned about Nabla and the leaders within their organization and the product that they had developed and the impressive impact that their tool could have on, physicians and our patients. As you mentioned, uh, we also had a burning platform within the medical group, which is why we decided to partner with Nabla. And that burning platform, no pun intended, was physician burnout. Um, as you mentioned, it's a significant problem in healthcare today, and nearly 50% of physicians across the United States are affected by burnout. And this, of course, takes a toll, not only on the physicians, but also has negative consequences on patient care too. I don't know if you saw this or not, but I was glad to see that in this past month, the American Medical Association released a report about the amount of burnout in the US, and it's finally decreased for the first time in 4 years. But to me, physicians suffering from burnout remains unacceptably high. There are some specialties that continue to be particularly affected, including internal medicine, which is, my specialty, family medicine, obstetrics and gynecology, hospital medicine, emergency medicine, and pediatrics. And many of those are primary care specialties, which is, again, the area where I practice. And so it really hits close to home for me. And so, for me, the work that I do it's more than just a job. It's always been about improving the sustainability of clinical practice, using technology to remove the barriers that physicians don't need to do and really shouldn't be spending their time dealing with. Activities that don't require physician expertise. So things like having endless mouse clicks in the electronic health record, sending messages to patients about each lab result that comes into their in-basket. And of course, the topic that we're talking about today, entering clinical documentation into the electronic health record. And so it's about helping as many of my fellow colleagues as I can, empowering them to engage with their patients instead of engaging with the computer screen, um, liberating them to leave work on time, to have dinner with their family. And instead of spending their evenings and late nights working on their in-basket and completing their charts, doing something that allows them to promote self-care, whether it's reading a book, exercising, spending time with their loved ones. Sometimes people ask me how it feels to have gone from being executive on the health system provider side now over to the vendor industry side. And I tell them that it was actually a relatively easy transition. And simply because, I believe in our mission. It just like everyone else does at Nabla. And now I'm in a position to do work that can not only improve the lives of tens of thousands of physicians, I have the potential of bringing positive change to hundreds of thousands. And so, Piyush, thank you for giving me the time to share a little bit about my story, my personal motivations. But let's go ahead and get started talking a little bit about the article published in the New England Journal of Medicine Catalyst earlier this year. And it was titled Ambient Artificial Intelligence Scribes to Alleviate the Burden of Clinical Documentation. So let me set the stage a little bit here and describe some of the thinking and events that led to this publication. So before I left Kaiser Permanente, I initiated work to evaluate the various ambient AI scribe technologies out in the marketplace. So I had several criteria, several parameters that I was looking at. First, it had to be something that was AI driven. 3 years prior to initiating this project, we looked at a scribe product that had some AI, but it was largely human driven. And so, we realized that human scribes, as good as they can be, are typically quite costly. Note creation time can be on the magnitude of hours or even days compared to AI technology, which could create a note within seconds. Um, Output had to make sense to me, as a physician. If I'm going to sign off on a note as my own, it needs to be written in a way that I would write my notes to contain information that I would include. Not anything that was fabricated or hallucinated, but specifically the pertinent parts of the conversation between myself and my patient. The tool had to be user-friendly. Technology adoption in the physician community is very challenging, and it becomes near impossible if a significant amount of training is needed to learn how to use a tool. And we also needed something that we could deploy very rapidly. If the vendor partner that we were looking at could not execute at the speed at which we wanted to move, it was excluded from consideration. And I wanted a partner, not a vendor, a partner. And so what that meant to me was having a team that we could work with, that we could grow with, and learn together so that we could turn our ideas, our concepts into reality. And that can't be done without true partners. And really as a corollary to that, we needed to have the confidence in the technical skill set of the team. It's only helpful to have a partner that can actually turn these concepts into reality. And that can't be done without a world-class technical team. I'm almost done here. A couple more points with respect to what my criteria was is one was around privacy and security. It's really important for me, and it's really a non-negotiable. The foundation really of a patient-physician relationship, it's based on trust. And trust extends to privacy of the data, including data from conversations between the physicians and the patients. And so it's really actually quite hard to build trust, but it's really easy to lose that trust. So if there was a breach or data being used without consent, that would easily come tumbling down. And and then finally, you know, the bottom line is often the bottom line. We needed a solution that couldn't break the bank. And as the saying goes, no margin, no mission. And so we needed to be fiscally responsible in our evaluation around this. So in a very short period of time, it was clear that Nabla could basically check off every single one of these boxes. And one pilot user said, Nabla comes out with solutions before I know I need them. And it reminded me of a Steve Jobs quote, who said, some people say you need to give customers what they want. But that's not my approach. Our job is to figure out what they're going to need before they do. And that's really an example of how a partner really operates as a partner and not a vendor. So after a brief pilot period, the organization made a decision to move forward with a broader rollout. And so that's where, this New England Journal of Medicine article comes in, which, I think as you mentioned, and I believe is the only published study of a large scale deployment of an AI tool of any kind. And so this article documented the experience 10 weeks into the rollout. It talked about scale, it talked about metrics, it talked about rollout methodology. And so the scale was actually quite impressive. 3,400 physicians had used Nabla up to that point in 10 weeks into the deployment. And, that actually is quite fast in terms of physician adoption. Some organizations spend years trying to get that level of technology adoption, but this was done in a very quick period of time. Over 300,000 encounters. So we're talking about enterprise production scale. Nearly 1,000 physicians used Nabla for over 100 encounters. And there was even one physician over that 10-week period who had over 1,200 encounters. Metrics that were looked at, definitely very important as you're looking at deploying Ambient AI Scribe yourself to understand the effectiveness of your implementation. And so the goals of implementing Ambient AI for the KP, Kaiser Permanente team, was one, how effective is it at reducing EHR workload? And this was measured in terms of time spent outside of regular work hours, the so-called pajama time, and then also time spent in notes per chart period. And there are other sort of ancillary metrics that were looked at, which surprisingly did not change around things like, how much time were you in chart review? How much time were you in the in-basket? You wouldn't expect that necessarily to be affected by Ambient Scribe, but the time working after hours and time spent in charting did significantly decrease for those using the Ambient AI solution. Clinician feedback. Obviously really important because this tool actually is created for clinicians to help with burnout. And so there were testimonials around things like, it made the visits more enjoyable. Notes were more concise and comments like, this is a game changer for them. And in the end, a lot of things that we do and most things that we should do is centered around patient care and patient experience. And so there were surveys done in the study that looked at how did patients perceive the use of the Ambient AI tool during their encounters with their clinicians. And so 71% reported that the physician spent more time talking to the patients, 71%. And 81% of the time, patients felt like their physicians spent less time looking at a computer screen compared to previous visits. So, note, I'm just seeing here, not sharing a presentation. I have one slide. I don't think I necessarily need to share it. It's
No worries, no worries. I just want to double check.
Got it. Basically, a summary of kind of things I'm talking about here. But another important metric that was looked at was around patient experience. Note quality. There's a validated survey around note quality called the PDQI-9, Physician Documentation Quality Instrument. And what was done in the study was that there were 35 randomly assessed notes across multiple specialties to look at the note quality and the factors that were looked at with this quality instrument. How accurate was the note? Was it thorough? Was it useful? Organized? Comprehensive? Succinct? Synthesized? Internally consistent? Free from hallucination? And free from bias. Those last two parameters were added to the standard PDQI-9. specifically because the tool that was being evaluated was a AI tool. And the results of this PDQI-9 survey across these 35 randomly assessed notes was that there was a score of 48 out of 50. So the note quality was quite high. And the last thing I'll touch upon here is that there were there was documentation within the study that talked about how the tool was deployed within the Northern California KP environment. And I'll say that there's not necessarily one right way to deploy technology. It really depends on the health system itself, the resources within the health system, the culture of technology adoption. But within KP, we had sort of a set way of terms of deploying technology. As when I was the CIO, I supported a robust technology infrastructure that could be leveraged to make large-scale deployments successful. And so that involved physician leaders within each department who basically understands not only technology, but also understands clinical operations, and could be a local resource, for their colleagues to help answer questions around the technology. And so with this deployment, there was also a train the trainer model that was used. It's hard to train, 10,000 clinicians all at once. And what was employed with this deployment was a train the trainer model. And there were, folks that were trained live. There were webinars that we recorded that could be used to train additional clinicians. I'll say this though, and I mentioned this earlier, that in the end, excessive training really, I don't think, was quite necessary, because it really would not have been as successful as it was if not for the fact that the product itself was intuitive to use. And so long drawn out training really would not have been very effective. So, maybe I'll stop there. I think I've said a lot here, and I'm sure there are questions, Paish, that you might want to ask, and maybe audience questions as well.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing all the experience over here, and I actually see quite a few questions related to this, and I can see them in the chat, so I'm going to take them over here. One of the questions that seems to recur over here is about physicians and expansion of this scribe to nursing. So is this AI scribe available to nursing too? Because we see the same level of burnout over there. The amount of documentation burden for them, I think it is very, very similar. And is there hope?
There is always hope. There is always hope. I'm a very optimistic person, actually. If you got to know me, I'm a forever optimist, but I am also a realist. And so there is hope, because this technology, I think, can be used for all our clinicians anytime that there is a verbal interaction between the clinician, whether it's a physician, a physician assistant, a nurse practitioner, a social worker, a bedside nurse, and having a conversation or discussion with a patient. It's a matter of being able to extract that information, synthesize it, and then have it integrated into the electronic health record so that the information can be transported and transposed into there. And one of the challenges, I think, here at this point in time with respect to bedside nurse documentation is that workflow is quite data entry specific and flow sheet specific. And so EHRs need to have the APIs that can tie in to this type of information to be imported there. But aside from bedside nurses, I mentioned nurse practitioners. I mentioned there are also nurses who, function in a very similar way in terms of having more of a dialogue with patients, similar to how a physician might within a physician-patient encounter, and that is ready now. and that can be useful across many different disciplines within the clinical care setting.
That's great because I think again, it's not physicians or nursing, as you said, like it's a lot of others. Sorry, there's a chopper right above me that
I
might
hear.
be creating some background noise. But there's also a question about AI ML assisting doctors deal with FDA regulation. I'm not sure if this is the one for Nabla. I'm not sure if I understand this question right. But in terms of let me rephrase it slightly differently. With all the FDA regulation around this, what were some of the challenges going through FDA or other regulatory efforts to get to implementations? I mean, that's a common one. All the startups, everybody is faced with these regulatory challenges, and some of this is good because you want to screen and you want to vet the right product, making it to the clinical space. But how did you or Nabla approach this?
Yeah, I mean it's a great question, right? Because as you mentioned, it's on the minds of the technology vendors out there. It's on the minds of the health systems who are wanting to employ and deploy these types of technologies. It's of course on the minds of the lawyers as well, trying to help protect these agencies. Um, so I think here's the thing. It's a continually evolving landscape with respect to the regulatory environment. I agree with you that there needs to be some level of regulation so that we know that there is a level of quality assurance out there with these products. Um, and at the same time, I think there needs to be a balance here because regulatory aspects of things can't be so stifling that it prevents continual advancement and continual innovation in this space. And we know how quickly things are advancing. Um, and so, right now, I think the focus on these regulatory guardrails and things in place is really around things that promote clinical decision making, clinical decision-making tools that need to be regulated, but the expansion of that to include other types of AI products is continuing to grow. And so what we need to do from our standpoint is to just make sure that we are aware, cognizant, and proactive around understanding these rules and regulations to work with the other agencies that are out there that are having conversations with the regulators so that the input of the clinicians, the input of the technology companies out there, um, the input of the patients can all be taken into consideration so that the goals in the end of improving patient care, streamlining operations, and helping our clinicians practice medicine are all taken into consideration. Hey, Parsha, I think you're on mute there.
Oh, sorry, I was trying to ward off the chopper noise, but yeah, it's an evolving landscape, and I think it will continue to evolve. And I do see regulation coming not just from FDA but also from other attorney generals or other, if you're in different countries, through their different agencies too that we see. So yeah, the point is well taken that this will be an evolving landscape. The other group of questions that I find really interesting is around ROI. So it starts from uh, can you do this with $10,000? No, uh, trying to make it funny, but somebody asked like, how much does it take to get something this together? I would guess like it takes a lot of resources. It's not just about the dollar amount, but also the people that you need to get something like this, up and running, and not just people as in like just physicians and ML experts. You need a full business scale, and that's why the vendors, the companies that are doing these things is helpful because health systems by themselves can't do it. I don't think they can do it by themselves. So I think you made that point earlier, and that point is well taken. That some of us need to be in that vendor space to help develop these solutions that can help healthcare and our own colleagues there. But there was also a question related to ROI. So what is the when you look at ROI, what metrics, and that's a very important metric, especially for healthcare leaders when we are trying to go and pitch it to them that here is a solution, and yes, it can help decrease clinician burnout, but they hear about that from a lot of different ways. Well, yoga can help decrease clinician burnout too. So when you look at ROI or the value proposition, what are the key metrics that support its use?
Yeah. This is an important question that comes up all the time. And I always start by mentioning what I think is really important aspect of here, which is the value equation. The value equation is looking at quality, service, and cost. So on the numerator side, you have quality and service. And on the denominator, you have cost. And so if quality goes up or service goes up, then you increase value. Or if quality and service remain the same and cost goes down, then value can also increase, right? So with that framework in mind, another sort of approach to take when you're talking about ROI and benefits is that taking a look at sort of some of the specific features of a solution that you're trying to bring in. And whether it's around revenue generation or cost avoidance, those are actually a couple of important aspects as well. And so, one thing that we talk about is sort of the potential for improvements around billing and coding. So you have more detailed, more complete documentation, accurate representation actually of what went on during that encounter with the patient and the clinician, such that you can actually code and bill more accurately and more readily. Around sort of a potential around cost avoidance. So Nabla actually has the ability not only to create an AI-generated note, but actually has the functionality to do straight dictation too. And so maybe you have a software license that is separate where you have to do straight dictation. Now you can actually have a solution that does both, and you can save on that software license cost on the other end by deploying a solution like Nabla. And then there's maybe some softer things here that maybe a CFO may not necessarily count, but I think is critically important here. That what can ambient AI solution do for physicians and other clinicians in terms of reduction in time doing clinical tasks, sustainability of practice, and reduction in burnout, which then will decrease attrition and clinician turnover. And then, of course, we can't forget about patients. And so, having an attentive physician who can lead to a feeling of being heard as a patient, being engaged with, and feel like they're really being cared for. There's a quote that I remember from Michelangelo. People will forget what you said. People will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel, right? And so if you have an ambient scribe tool that takes the keyboard and computer out of the equation and you're just focusing on the patient, patients will feel better. They'll feel listened to. So, these better patient experiences can lead to higher satisfaction scores, which can, potentially affect Medicare stars and can increase, patient member retention as well.
That's great. And I think my suspicion also is that some of these metrics will keep on evolving too as you expand the use cases. Then I suspect that those cases would improve. In my prior discussions, I learned there are so many other use cases that are being looked upon, and I think that is likely to be an evolving space too.
Well, I completely agree with that too. And so, I mean, there's so much that can be done here. I'm so excited about this because there's so much can be done because, when you're talking to a patient, there's a wealth of information that comes out. And we're probably only capturing a very small amount of that. More now with Ambient Scribe, but what I mean more than that is just sort of more than besides documentation. 80% of diagnosis is based on good, thorough history taking. And so in the future, we could have AI assisted nudges around things like, hey, did you ask about this? Did you think about that? consider this on your differential diagnosis. And so accuracy of diagnosis, um, improvement in treatment, those are all things that can actually help decrease disease burden, improve patient care, improve patient health. And so I'm so excited about what the future can hold around this type of technology.
I see a couple of questions. I'm going to try to put them together in one. One is, can your current technology or possibly the future version help summarize existing notes or existing data? And I think an extension of that is, how do you see Epic, which has been the leader in the EHR space, uh, either having their own product or integrating this into that? How smooth is the integration part of that?
Yeah. Yeah. No, those are, excellent questions. Maybe I'll start with the second one here around Epic and Epic integration. Um, so Epic, obviously, one of the leading EHR companies out there. There are many others, and the great thing about Nabla is that we not only integrate with Epic, we can integrate with Cerner, NextGen, a bunch of other EHR products that are out there. Um, what I have seen, though, is that these EHR companies, for the most part, understand that this is a technology that is continually evolving, continually advancing, and that their core product doesn't include necessarily this skill set or this functionality. And so I see that leading into the future, there's still going to be a space for companies like Nabla to continue to innovate and bring ever advancing technology that their users can plug into. And so if you just look at the Epic showroom, where Nabla is listed as one of the companies that integrate with Epic, you'll see that there are organizations that are already using this level of integration. Um, it's dependent on the EHR too, though. Kind of mentioned earlier with what you mentioned around nursing workflow. We need these EHR vendors out there to have the hooks, to have the APIs that allow us to put that discrete information into the EHR so that copy and paste isn't needed, which happens now in the unintegrated versions. So that's kind of my thoughts around Epic. Um, what was the first part of that question again?
The first was like, can it summarize clinical notes
Oh,
that already exist in EHR or some other domain?
yeah,
Because that's
yeah.
another
So
use case that many have talked about.
yeah, so uh, to my knowledge, none of the ambient AI companies out there do that at this point because um, uh, it's kind of correlated to what I just mentioned with Epic in that they're not necessarily focusing on creating this ambient AI technology. They are focused on many other generative AI projects. UGM is happening right now, and there was a slide that went up that talked about over 100 Gen AI projects that are underway right now, and one of them is around the summarization of past documentation. And so I'm not sure if the ambient AI companies out there will get in that space just because the EHR vendors are actively working on that.
Yeah, and it's challenging too because I think what you and Nabla are focused on is capturing that physician and patient or clinician patient encounter, whereas the task that is of summarization is a completely different task there. And the challenge also over there I find is it's just so much garbage in and so much templated stuff in that the summarization can be done only at so much quality level, and creating the high quality summaries is always a challenge along with the cost. So let me ask you a practical question, because this has been a fascinating conversation, and we are trying to figure out the real life implementation thing. So today I decide I want ambient AI scribe. What's next for me? What do I need to do next as a person in healthcare system? Of course, I'll go to my chief IT officer. What does he need to do next? Or I go to my CEO and say, like, if you don't get this, I'm going to quit. what's next? How does somebody approach this?
Well, I think it's important to have those conversations within the leadership team within the organization. Um, but I think it's important to take in consideration, perhaps three different angles here to look at. One from the health system perspective. Um, and so much of the responsibility from the health system perspective lies around trying to understand the change management effort that's involved with trying to implement technology, technology in general, but specifically around ambient AI, and so it's around things like stakeholder engagement, having clear and transparent communication, having people understand why this project is so important, and then having leadership, visible leadership, provides that support to proceeding with this, and then making sure though that despite the fact that a lot of this is kind of centered around physician well-being and physician burnout, making sure that there is a maintenance on patient-centered care, which people feel it though. Like when patient care and convenience is not necessarily a top priority, people know it, people feel it, and then you won't get as much buy-in from the health system perspective. Um, it's also about making sure you choose the right company to work with. And I talked a lot about not necessarily being a vendor, but being a partner. Um, and so from the technology side, from the tech partner side, it's incumbent to find a product that is easy, easy to learn, simple to use, and it has to add value. The value goes back to some of those evaluation criteria that I mentioned earlier. And, does it produce the note that you want? Does it fit into the workflow? Does the technology partner provide the support that you need, not just during implementation, but after deployment as well? Does it have the feature set and functionality that's compelling for me and my physicians, clinicians? And that goes beyond just sort of the bread and butter. Um, can it create the note? Does it work with multiple specialties, ambulatory, inpatient, emergency medicine, in-person telehealth, all those things that Nabla does, multiple language support. Does it do those things too? Does it have multiple note templates, note formats, patient instructions, visit summaries for that can be provided to the patients? So I think of those as sort of, bread and butter table stakes. That has to be in an ambient solution. But does it have additional functionality, additional bells and whistles beyond that? Things like what Nabla has, like a tool that we call Magic Edit, where the user can basically instruct the AI on how to customize their note based on how I would want to customize it. So it's sort of like injecting an AI prompt into the note generation process so the note comes out the way you want. Um, and then another, really great feature that I think, only we have is ambient dot phrases. So it's really quite awkward to um, be in a room with a patient and say, your heart sounds good, regular rate and rhythm, normal S1, S2, no murmurs, rubs, and gallops. You don't want to necessarily verbalize that, but if I just say, hey, your heart sounds normal, Nabla has the ability to take that keyword, those keywords, and insert a block of text into your note. And so bells and whistles, additional functionality like that, take a look. Does the AI Scribe company have that available? And so that should go into some of the decision-making process too.
That's great. So another thing that we that we typically encounter, so now the CEO is ready, everybody is excited about this AI scribe, but then it goes through a governance process. It goes through legal or some other governance entity that might have been set up at that health system. What are the common challenges that people experience through that? Especially, there is a lot of caution about large language models right now, generative AI. There is a lot of uh, palpitations because of the ethical issues or the legal issues, the data leak issues, the hallucination issues. And a lot of these governance groups sometimes, even the legal, everybody's trying to learn about these technologies too at the same time. So they are also challenged in understanding what it truly does, and will the patient privacy be secured, and all these challenges be a non-issue. So what have been the common challenges and some mechanisms to overcome those?
So you mentioned one thing that's really quite important that I was particularly looking at when I was evaluating these products was around privacy and security. And I mentioned that a little bit earlier in terms of uh, if you don't have privacy, you don't have security, you lose the trust of our patients, you lose the trust of our clinicians. And so um, one thing that was important for me and basically ended some of the conversations that we had with some of the vendors that we were looking at was that um, around using the notes themselves, using the transcriptions, the audio themselves to improve the product and or to have sort of gain ownership or rights over the note itself. So when that came along, I was like, well, you know what? There are other organizations out there that don't have those level of requirements, and so it's a matter of understanding that. So with Nabla, there's no one time where there's an actual recording of the note. That's unique within this landscape here where we do that. We don't take any of the data that's from the encounters and use it to improve our product unless there's specific consent from the parties involved to provide on a note by note basis here. So um, it's a matter of working through and talking about um, the concerns from the health system perspective and understanding those challenges and being flexible within the parameters of what you feel are acceptable from sort of the vendor side as well. So it's a negotiation.
Right. So, okay, so the CEO is all excited. They approved it. The governance process approved it. Everybody's all excited. I'm waiting for it. How long does it take from, some range of like, okay, let's get started with this to having it live in your experience at a health system?
So with us, and this was one of the major factors of why we went with Nabla initially here, was because um, uh, we could deploy the product very, very quickly. Now, there's different levels of deployment here, though. And so initial deployment can be web-based, non-integrated with the EHR, and you can get that into the hands of clinicians like today, right? If you go to the Nabla website, you can actually sign up as an individual user to start using the product today, right? And I think that's a little unique with Nabla too, because most of the other products out there, you have to have enterprise level agreements and which is important, but you can't necessarily trial the product that easily. Um, but if you're looking at technical integration and integration into the EHR, that takes some time. Just like any level of EHR integration may take and requires resources, dollars, people hours to work with the technical teams on the health system side and technical teams from the ambient AI side. So, that could be dependent on the resources available. And quite often with Nabla, we can move as quickly as what allows from the health system side. So it could be a matter of a few short weeks to get something integrated into the EHR.
That's great. I think the paper, which I've posted in the chat also and is available through our website also, talks about how to evaluate it post implementation. So that's a perfect way to have it evaluated. So there is already a template. So if you've already gone through that and you want to evaluate how well it's working, I think that paper showcases the best approach to do that. And of course, as a page from BrainX AI, we do have a LLM evaluation tool free to use called Humanely. You can go to our website and find it, read the paper in preprint over there, as we want to make sure that the evaluation of these AI products is done consistently, comprehensively, and something that is reproducible and fulfills the needs of the different parties. Of all the different things that you talked about, it also excites me that it's not just about the patient and the clinician encounter. What also excites me is that maybe we have the opportunity to create high quality data. Because sometimes what we find in EHR is low quality data. And my hope is that, and I probably the hope of many other researchers or developers or clinicians, is that we start finding high quality data through this ambient AI scribe and various different technologies using AI. Because otherwise, it's just you just have too much data, but it's not high quality data, which is a requirement for any other development that goes in the future. So any other last words of wisdom or advice to this great community and many others who will be joining and listening to this discussion through YouTube, our YouTube channel, and other sources? How to approach this? How to successfully approach this? Any last words of wisdom, Dr. Lee?
Well, I may be all wisdom out here, but but I definitely appreciate the opportunity to discuss this really important topic. And I guess I would leave with the fact that the you have to get started, right? You kind of have to sort of take the plunge here, and and the longer you wait to start, and the longer you wait to sort of begin this analysis here, the longer it will take for you to get this tool into the hands of your clinicians. And that's why I moved so quickly, because I knew that the more expeditious I could move, the quicker my physicians could benefit. And so just go and get started, and start the conversation.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you all the participants for joining us. There's some very exciting round of discussion. Uh, Please follow us on brainxcommunity.com on our LinkedIn group, and we will post this video onto our YouTube channel. So if anybody missed it, any of your friends or colleagues missed it, you can still catch us over there. Uh, Till next time, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.